John, wonderful to have you here today. How are you?
Lovely to be here. I'm great, Anna. It's nice to finally meet you. We were just talking about this earlier, but I've seen you in the industry from a distance for so long, and it's great to be in a chat room.
And we know so many of the same people. It's ridiculous.
I know.
And here we are together for this.
True story. True story.
All right. So before I start firing some questions at you, I want to just read a little bit about your bio so that people can hear about that, and then we'll go for it. So, John is the proud production stage manager with Teatro ZinZanni in Chicago, and that reopened in July 2021, and I'm looking forward to talking about that. John has been leading stage management teams with Dragone and FiveCurrents Productions in Wuxi, China, Fuerza Bruta in Las Vegas, and Rail Events Productions on the Polar Express train ride, the Chicago production. He was previously the general stage manager for Cirque du Soleil's production of JOYÀ in Mexico, Michael Jackson's One, and Zumanity for Cirque du Soleil, so that's great. John also served as production manager for Lake Tahoe Shakespeare Festival in 2009, creating a LORT-C Shakespeare Festival out of a hosting organization complete with a new scene shop, costume shop, and administrative systems. John has worked on management staffs at the Illinois and Utah Shakespearean Festivals, the Goodman Theatre, Oberlin Dance at the Illinois and Utah Shakespearean Festivals, the Goodman Theatre, Oberlin Dance Collective and Opera Australia. Before becoming a manager, John was on various run crews at the Santa Fe Opera, Utah Shakespearean Festival, and did 2 tours of the Nebraska Theatre Caravan, fall and east coast of A Christmas Carol. John has a Bachelor of Arts in Theatre from the University of Nebraska in Omaha and a Master of Fine Arts in Stage Management from the University of Delaware's Professional Theatre Training Program. He's also had the pleasure of being a professional mentor for 6 years with USITT Stage Management Mentoring Project. Man, you are a busy person.
Yes, I am. Well, and to think that I do all that, and I'm also an active artist on the side, working in fused glass, steel, and things that light up on fire. Like, yeah, I have little downtime and prefer that.
And so now you're in Chicago. I want to start there because a lot of people haven't got back to work yet, and Teatro ZinZanni has opened. So how's it going in Chicago? What was the process about reopening, and what's the role like there?
So it was it's interesting. Teatro ZinZanni started as a Seattle-based circus company, and with Norm Langhill and a whole group of artists up there, they built this concept around having a Spiegel tent. For those that don't know, that's a Belgian-style, glass tent from the started in the late 1800s. Our baby, our Spiegel tent Zazu, she was born in the 1950s. But they had this concept of getting different kinds of live music and circus acts and comedy and bring all these things together to make a smaller cast show and produce that. They made a San Francisco show and then opened the Chicago show in 2019. So it didn't last very long before the pandemic shut her down. And we are the first of the 3 sister cities to open, the Chicago-based one. And so we did. We started our casting and kind of brought some of the best elements of different Teatro ZinZanni productions and cast some new faces, some old ones, to make the show we currently have. The cast is 9 people. From all walks of life, as far as from Kiev, Ukraine. However, those people have their citizen cards in the United States, so we don't have to jump through all those because that also is part of the pandemic challenge. Certainly, Cirque, I know my former employer, Cirque du Soleil, is facing a lot of that. But here we are. We work with the clay that we have here in the States, and we've been very successful. Everyone is vaccinated that work for our company, and it's part of the requirement in coming back. Thankfully, in our particular community of performers and artists, all of us, that wasn't even a question of whether we would do that or not. It was just like, no, man, we want to get back to work, so let's shoot up and get ready for the task at hand. Our show is also unique because it's a dinner experience. So in our show, we have another third party.
All of the other COVID protocols when it comes to food, my God.
Exactly. Challenge accepted, my friend. Like, now for our tent, we're not outside. We're actually downtown in the theater district. They had in 2018, they had blown down a wall in the Hotel Cambria in the theater district of Chicago and found this old Masonic theater that no one knew was there. So they cleared it all out and then put the Spiegel tent in there. Now that works to our advantage because it means all all of our HVAC systems are modern and new. So they already were having some of those ways to clean out particulates specifically that could also handle the COVID virus. So for us, we already had an HVAC system that was set up for it. We just had to push it a little further, which we did, so that now we can host people. Our capacity is 300, which, compared to some of the former theaters, I think my biggest I've ever sat was a 2,300 seat space, having a thing that seats 300, but we started at 210 and are slowly increasing. I think our top house so far has been 230, but with Delta variant, we're watching the game. What else can we do? We're currently in the world of not wearing masks. However, everybody is standing by. We have, the beautiful masks for in costume for the artists, if we get to that point. But the challenge really is in circus, it's hard to have performers perform masks because they are pushing their bodies to such a level that you can't be gasping for air while also having that. So we're finding that middle ground, and with the Delta variant coming up, it's not bad in Chicago right now. It's not like in Australia, which has been shut down. We're keeping our eye on that prize.
Do you have things like regular temperature checks or regular testing or anything like that in part of the company?
Not at this time, but we have an active conversation about how people are doing and checking in. So we're not to full temperature gun, take your temperature at the door, but we have the equipment. We're standing by in case that we do have to go that route. The major impact from COVID is because right now in the States, there is a huge, there's a dearth of servers in the restaurant industry. There are many people that don't want to go back to it because not only has COVID been big for the actual health aspect, it's also caused for us in the United States a reckoning about what jobs and how much people are paid and that whole balance. And so right now we don't have enough servers as we would like, enough bartenders as we would like. The service industry is not fully back. So we're kind of riding with that. And from a production side, we're giving a lot of space to our restaurant brothers and sisters over there to make sure we're all dancing together because they just don't have numbers like they would normally during a run of Teatro ZinZanni.
It's really amazing because it just how different countries are managing and the protocols that get placed in and things like that. And I really admire the audaciousness of America getting back to it. It's great. I think here in Hong Kong, there's far more caution and also far more, you go into anywhere here, you have to scan to get an app that says I was here. You get temperature checks. You've got to put disinfectant on your hands. And the events that I've run here, everybody has had to be tested before going to the event. So there's not like regular performances of theater and stuff like that. But if you're doing a one-off event, then everybody's got to get tested and stuff. So it's still fairly even though we have no cases here except for imported cases. So it's really a strange vibe where everybody's like getting back to work when there's still cases around, yet we've got none and we can't do anything. It's crazy. So.
Well, and we're the first show to open in the Chicago Theater District. We're the first. So there is that feeling. There's the enthusiasm of the audaciousness to just go first. So that's there. While at the same time, there's that wariness that we've all built up from a year and a half of pandemic, keeping the eye on the prize going, great. I appreciate the enthusiasm there. And I am definitely a passionate stage manager that I drive from my heart and with a logical brain, but but I do have one eye on that number count kind of going, okay, great. I get that. There's a cost of being first. There is the concern about what happens if we have to shut down. But hey, right now, thankfully, knocking on wood there, as long as we keep our eye on that and we stay adult about the conversation and continue to pay attention and not just go into the enthusiasm and the desire for it to be over, I think we can do it together.
I think also that, like you said, that you've got the audience capacity of 300. So that's a far easier manageable audience side than bringing thousands of people together. So, and I wonder if that will continue where we start with all the small things that are possible as opposed to just going out with the big bang, So.
I think so. When I think of at NJ1, when I was there, I was the general stage manager for 4.5 years in their creation G, similar to you at House. And I for there, our house capacity was 1803, 1804 with that one handicap spot. And to make that percentage, to make that profitable, you need a pretty high percentage because there's so much production value in there. That show has fireworks and all of this, the equipment, the people, 117 technicians when I worked there and 68 artists. So with a show of 9, with a staff of like 5 or 6 production, not including my BSM squad or my backstage manager team, we can navigate that while also, and we've also been addressing the real conversations in American theater right now of salary balance, making sure people are paid what they're worth, health insurance and those things. Like thankfully the company Randolph Entertainment that is producing Teatro ZinZanni-Chicago, they have been keeping their eye on that too. So with that small of a company, we can steer better, kind of like the English Navy going against the Spanish Armada in 1588, like smaller boats can navigate a little faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't envy the position of all the producers out there, like wondering when to press the go button. Like, is it now? Is it in a month?
Totally. Well, and in circus, you can, especially the smaller ones, you can kind of get this tough mentality of, we're the artists, we're on the production side, and those are the suits, they're over there. I think the pandemic has eliminated that distance and realize how much we're all in this together. If the money is not coming in, we can't have the health insurance and the jobs. So and Randolph did a great job during the pandemic for Randolph. They actually kept a lot of they took care of their people, that the larger companies like Cirque, they can't, there's too many numbers. How can you will buckle under that weight of so much health insurance of that many people when you're not making nothing is coming in.
Absolutely. They're totally reliant on that income, not even week to week, but day to day, right? And the minute that it stops, it's like everything goes over. So 100%. We could sit here and talk about COVID all day. Yep. I don't want to talk about COVID all day, so let's move on. You're a really well-rounded stage manager, and you've landed yourself in a lot of different genres of entertainment and in different locations in the world. So I just want to start off with your kind of concept of, how you've moved through the different genres of stage management. What was your mentality? What are those key attributes that you think that you offer a production and also makes you flexible enough to go from genre to genre and even country to country?
Yeah. Well, I started off as a technician that loved opera. I grew up in an opera family. I was raised in the wardrobe department of Opera Omaha at the basement of the Orpheum, right underneath the stage. My grandmother's a seamstress for Opera Omaha for 40 years. So there was always this connection. Oh, yeah. And so seeing that as a kid, being around that culture, the people,
we need to interview your grandma. Is she still alive?
No, sadly, no.
Damn.
I know. She was very instrumental to my life. Strong women has been a theme throughout my existence that has pushed me to hopefully excellence. But anyway, so I grew up in that opera household. And so when I started stage managing, because as a technician, I thought I was going to live my life on a road box. And then thankfully, in my first semester, I had a wonderful mentor professor at University of Nebraska at Omaha, Stephen Williams, who I think is in the chat.
He's there, I can see.
Yes, yay. But he asked me, why don't I try my hands at stage managing? Because I had all this background in doing, I was heavily involved in the Boy Scouts. I'm an Eagle Scout, doing all these large scale ceremonies and setting up, campfire type things. And so I had this stuff, and then I had all this professional experience. So I didn't go right into undergrad. I did a technical apprenticeship program at the Omaha Community Playhouse in Omaha and had traveled the road on bus and trucks. And so he pushed me to try it out. And it was thankfully, hi, Stephen. It was a duck to water for doing that. But while I'm doing stage managing normal plays, the urge to do something bigger was there, while on top of a fear of, I grew up very blue collar in Omaha, Nebraska. My dad was a chief steward of a labor union. I knew that the more diverse my resume, the more likely I am to eat and get health insurance. I think this is the third time I mentioned health insurance, but hey, pandemic brain,
hey, valuable.
It's a thing, guys. But I saw this, I wanted to keep playing my career like chess, where I kept my board open, my options open, so that I can always have something that I could play off of. And I also thought that by having a larger network, that meant more people would know me, I would get more likely to have work. But also in all of this, my desire is to make our industry better and to have a large impact on it through positive thinking or that which I bring to the table, which is in the later part of your question. Yeah. So I kept going and, did the USITT apprenticeship program, which opened up my network more. I did the professional theater training program at University of Delaware under Rick Cunningham, which helped me on classic theater. But I knew that I enjoyed that, but I also really enjoy event management. And I kept having this little niggling voice in the back of my head saying, you should try something else. And then thankfully, as I'm leaving in 2007 from Delaware with my MFA in stage management, which I really was just getting because I was scared of not eating and I wanted a larger network and I wanted to get out of Omaha. As much as I love Omaha, I wanted to expand my network so that I can keep being paid for our craft. Blissfully, in 2004, I ran into, at USITT Stage Management Mentoring Project, a gentleman that I knew 6 years earlier at Utah Shakes, who just remembered me as a crew guy you go to get things done, Trevor Long. And he remembered that, ran into me and just realized I was a stage manager now and said, you are a Cirque stage manager. And I didn't know what that meant. My first comment was, I don't speak French, although, I've gotten just enough French that I can go into a bar in Montreal and order and find out where the restaurant is or the restroom is and not completely embarrass myself in basic conversation. But the rest, it's boo, like, what are you going to do? I took Russian in high school, so
Okay, random.
Totally random. Well, I come from a Czech, that grandmother.
There you go. So not so random then.
Yeah, she's Czech, and Russian has a strong flow in the Czech language. So I wanted that. But anywho, he said I was a Cirque stage manager. He pushed. At that time, I thought I was going to Chicago. I'd interned at the Goodman. I thought I was going to be a storefront stage manager. But thankfully, Trevor pushed, and I applied, and a job opened at Zumanity at New York Hotel Casino. Long live the zoo. They closed due to pandemic. But thank you, Sébastien. Merci, mon ami. But I just saw that he could teach me French, which always a fan. Right now, I'm focusing on my Espanol. But anywho, I applied, I fell in love, and I found my tribe. I moved to Vegas. I did that. I still had this urge to help American theater and be a part of the solution. So I left Cirque after a year and a half, which some people would think I'm insane because I was a stage manager at Cirque du Soleil. And for a lot of people, that's their mountaintop. And it wasn't loud enough. Like, I enjoyed it and I had this great experience. And also I was there as an artist, had a unfortunate moment. They fell 40 feet to the stage and we did the emergency procedures of it. And this experience being classic Shakespeare, that was a lot to take. And because I'm somewhat empathetic, I have a strong empath gene, like any good G does, or good GSM or production stage manager. And so I needed to reconnect my thoughts on that. So I ran to be the production manager for this new Shakespeare Festival, which was the beginning of my desire to create a community of artists. Like, ultimately, that I see my role as a GSM or PSM or whatever, alphabet soup that goes in front of the SM that belongs there. I'm here to lead artists. I'm an artist myself. I paint, I sculpt, I do these things. And I want to be the person that is helping these artists come together on one page to make the art happen so that we can blow the socks off of that audience. And I like that in our jobs. And so Tahoe was the first time I did that. That went away. It was a good contract. It didn't last. All contracts come to an end. But Cirque brought me back and promoted me to be a general stage manager. So I came back to Zoo, tried my method, and started learning what that even is. What is it when it is a Grüber run show, and figuring out what that means. And it was successful enough at Zumanity that Cirque decided to move both myself and the artistic director at the same time, because we were a great partnership. Silke Ortloff, a wonderful director and woman and artist, moved us to MJ1 or Michael Jackson 1 to create that show together, which led to this wonderful 4.5-year project for that. So by the end of MJ, I felt like I had my system, and that's what made me want to go international, to try it internationally, to see, is this just an American thing? Is it more? And thankfully, as I continue to grow and adapt to different cultures, a lot of that means the same. And what does that mean? It means that what is a Grüber system? Usually it's one where people communicate with no BS, but also complete respect. We trust each other. Circuses, as you know, Anna, only exist because there's a high level of trust of everyone doing their jobs together. You know, Miles Davis had amazing people in his lineup, but when he had Coltrane in there, as he's getting ready for Kind of Blue, like you need these high level of talents, but everyone has to figure out how to flow together, and you only do that through communication and respect, and knowing that person's got your back over there. And though, if it's a true run by me system, I come in with a lot of positivity and a lot of energy. I'm a pretty passionate and energetic human being. So I come in there knowing that people can come to me and they know that there's that level of trust, but I'm also management by walking around. I'm going to be running around with either music on, like in the project in Wuxi, China, I had Leon Bridges' Bad Bad News, which is a great song. But the chorus is I made a good thing out of bad, bad news. And it has a dancey step. So I would play that while walking around this giant building so that people would go, oh, I know where Grüber is. I know where Grüber is, and I'm approachable. I'll come up. I'm always with a smile. Even when, you know, that one piece of scenery is backlogged in Sri Lanka and there's no way we can get it here and past the Chinese border. Well, there's no reason, like you can gnash your teeth and rend your garments if that's what you want to do. That's always a choice. But I feel part of the role of the professional production stage manager in this is to go, okay, great. Well, we're going to aim at something else then. That's okay. And keep the energy up, keep the love and lightness together. Hey, ni hao, Yuan. Yay. Okay. Sorry. I see someone in the message from the Wuxi project.
Awesome.
Why me? It's all about keeping that positivity up and making sure that you don't lower the game for everybody just because you're in a bad mood. Like, and it's okay to be human. I get that. But part of the job is pouring that positivity and love in there, because otherwise anyone can do it. You know, there were challenges in the Wuxi project where it would have been very easy to fall, but I decided to take that moment with my production team and everyone, all the artistic, wonderful human beings I got to work with, whether it's John Brady or Johanna Sapaki or what have you, to bring us to a higher level. And actually, of my notes of like for our conversation today, to me, it's finding out what the vision is on that project, identifying that early, and then committing everybody to that house on the hill. And making sure that people don't think that you're backstabbing over here or you're being manipulative. No. I believe in myself, but I believe in you and I believe in us. And keeping that energy up is key to do the large projects that we do together.
Absolutely. I love that. I think in other ways, that's really what a lot of people say in terms of setting the tone as part of stage management, you know, setting the tone of how the rehearsal room will run or the theatre will run. And stage managers often have a lot of responsibility and exposure to and accessibility to setting that tone. And so I like that that's your philosophy. What do you think about that when you think about working cross-culturally? Because obviously, especially in the circus environment, you've got hundreds of different cultures and specifically people that may or may not speak English, or you can't necessarily relate to somebody like you normally would, say, in a traditional American environment. What do you see? How did you navigate those barriers?
Well, because I'm pretty productive, so I'm always pushing things forward, and I have a certain intensity of my personal energy. So learning how to dim that was pretty key. Down in Mexico with JOYÀ, there were certain moments there on that project where I knew that if I came at it full energy, it would put people off, and it would be very much, the gringo's here, okay, like kind of a thing. So it's finding levels of connection is huge, of going, because yes, of course, ultimately, I don't know, it's like being a human Rosetta Stone, I guess, finding ways to translate that vision by creating that mutual vision and making sure that it's sticky to the people that you're working with, no matter what their culture is. Like what they see as their positive objective could be different than yours. You know, that maybe they just want to have this great job where they're learning how to do something that's not normally in their cultural system, what would do the automation or flying humans, and finding a new way of doing it. Well, maybe that's your sticky point. Maybe that's what gets them on the hill. Also, I have found it's very easy to be described as the foreigner, right? I'm coming in. I'm the American. I have tattoos. I'm me. I wear pop culture things. So I get that there's a little bit of thing of that dismissiveness, but there's also because I believe in you, I'm also going to put my team in positions to win. And so by them having their own victories, that translates all language, in my opinion. So a good example of that is in China, when we're working on the project with Dragone and Wuxi, with the local team, I would find out what that local team was excited about. We had one of the stage managers who just at a previous job there wasn't great contingency practice. Right? Like his big thing that Nico remembered really strongly was, on this show, obviously this is all through translator, but on this previous show, I was calling and this thing went wrong and broke and we had no plan. There was just no plan. And I was like, got it. Okay. And this is day one. I sit down with the whole team and I'm talking about, tell me your truths. I want to get to know everything about the clay I'm working with here to make them into a team that communicates, passes the ball, and gives each other chances for success, while also embracing positivity as a mindset, as a kind of part of your championship mindset. And so Nico became in charge of contingencies. Great. That's what I want you to do. I want you to ask those questions. I want you to push those things because, as you know, Anna, when you're making a show and you're the GSM PSM of it, you are obsessed with the big picture and trying to solve all these things and get these voices. You need a Nico to be going, hey, I don't know how we do this. Right. Let's train this. Okay, great. And you need these people to keep bringing their concerns to the fore. And so that became part of his job. And also making sure that then I'll take lead, but I'm putting him in positions of success by bringing him up going, hey, Nico, okay, great. So, hey guys, I just want to talk through the contingency on this. Nico, you had a thought? Translation. Okay, great. Now we're going to address this as a group. It's continually, and he was just an SM, right? Like, and in his mind, like there's no such thing as just in my world, but like to him, he's this, I don't have as much experience. I don't have the thing. Building those moments are really, really helpful. I mean, we just in Teatro ZinZanni, in this creation process, I knew the level of stage management they were used to before, which is great. They were awesome. I mean, I love the humans that they've had stage. The reason why I'm with Teatro ZinZanni is because my Aunt Kathy was the PSM 06 to 08 of the San Francisco Teatro ZinZanni show. And they did her right. So hence I got interested in the company. But part of my joy in a creation process is to have artistic or production think or just start to say that they want a noun, whatever that object is, and suddenly there's a stage manager with it ready to go. We've already been thinking about it too. Yeah, like the creation of MJ in the Cirque system, there's the PSM, the production team that run it, and then we operation people normally are very sidelined. They're setting up the table for us to eat,
and then they give it to
run
you.
For exactly. Now, thankfully, because of the way that we built that team, we had very proactive stage managers on there, including myself. So we became part of the creative process. I built a lot of those cues with the automation rigging team, as well as Joelle. So it was just kind of part of that process. So I would be in the front in the theater with Joelle Bergeron, wonderful human being. Shout out to Joelle Bergeron. He's a great GSM,
as well as producer him on the creation of Love.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. In the same relationship, he was in the production and I was in operations. So there you go. Isn't that funny?
Tiny world, my friend, tiny world.
Yeah.
But I would spend the time, I'm sitting next to Joelle and I'd have my hand over it. I'm not going to do it because this headset's a little different than the normal ones. But I'd be like, all right, guys, so they're talking about this at the table. If you could flank around and go to this position, okay, if you could do that. And it was like it became a seamless handover. At Teatro ZinZanni, I have my BSM squad that are kind of forming their identity, and there was nothing more joyful to have that set up on the DL so that when our director, Norm Langhill, or any of the directing team would ask for the thing, it's already here. Like they'd be like, hey, can I? And we're right there. Like we were in the game. So there was no waiting for the prop. But that happens because that BSM is now engaged. They're with us in the game of providing perfect service with joy in our heart, you know?
I love that.
And that translates.
Yeah, of course. And I also think that when you give people responsibility, 9 times out of 10, they stand up to take it, right? So especially when it gives them opportunity for growth or leadership in their own sense. So it's wonderful. What do you think in terms of people that are coming from a more traditional theatre background, be it Broadway or even their stage management training? What do they need to be ready for when they go into the circus environment? And what did anything surprise you when you did come into the circus environment? Like obviously you wouldn't have known exactly what the acrobats and all the automation would have been the minute that you first stepped into. Although Zumanity is a lot more of a lower key show, but that helps. Exactly. So what was your what would be your advice to people who are looking to go into circus, and what was your experience coming into it?
Well, okay, because I had that moment of truth that I alluded to earlier. I had an artist, while calling the show, fall 40 feet to the stage, right? And she lived, by the way, Maya. We got her back in the show 1 year later. I didn't leave the show until she was back in the show. But the fact that gravity can win, I never thought, like, before, to me as a theatrical stage manager, I'm there to fight tech. I'm there to fight wasted time. Part of my calling to stage management was as a technician, I was watching these poor stage managers just burn time and not realize with proper planning they could kick its butt. Well, with circus now, gravity is a factor. So yes, it's contingencies and safety protocols become louder and much more important in playing this game. Trust in the performer. Like before in normal theater, you'd be like, okay, I know, this William there is doing Richard III. And if he goes up, the rest of the cast has his back. But ultimately as a stage manager, I'm here, I'm doing lights up, light down, and whatever cool effects that we might add to it. But in circus, the trust becomes more louder. It's that thing, is what I was alluding to earlier. When trust goes in your circus is doomed. So you have to make sure that you are somebody who is trustworthy, and that people are, if you lead, people are actually going to follow. That becomes much louder. You don't have to be everyone's friend, right? Like as an artist, I need a level of introversion. I need my refill time because I like to think of myself as an ambivert. My extrovert can be very loud and my energy can be very loud, but I need these quiet times to refill. I need the time I have an art studio in the basement here in Chicago, so I need kiln time. I need time to make stuff. Otherwise, in my head, I'm just making other people's art, and that's not a great thing, you know? I always tell my stage managers that you're on a scale between servant and service, right? And there's a needle going between, and you're in charge of that needle. Like a lot of that can be where you're at right now, and you have to let that stuff go. So you have to get to, think of stuff positively that you're providing service, because servant will drag you down. Anyway, it totally a thing. For the theatrical person, they forget that they have to now rely on an acrobat saying something, that they can do something that before you're like, can you do that? Like you're basing your comparison on a theatrical system. You don't know circus, and you don't know what is possible when adrenaline is here and an acrobat is driven to succeed. Now, I say that you also, as you get better at the game of circus stage management, you do learn where that line is to pull them back from. But you don't even know that where the line is before chaos when you first come in as a theater stage manager, and you have to figure that out.
And I think there's also such a visceral relationship from even a show caller perspective to the artist, whereas there's a less of a relationship in a more traditional show calling sense. But you are there, like, you wait for my cue light. Otherwise, those lifts are not a depth, and you will die when you die if you don't follow my cue light. Like it becomes so visceral and tangible that there's the responsibility on both the artist and also the riggers and the automation operator and the show caller. Everybody has that sense of responsibility to keep each other safe in that environment.
So much so. And in that environment, when calling a brand new show, when you're the first caller of that new show,
terrifying.
Of a circus of that size. But it's more than just knowing the show three-dimensionally. You have to add time. Right. So I have all these monitors. So when I called MJ1 for the first time and rode that baby, I didn't call that show with wearing socks and shoes for the first 6 months of calling because my feet sweat. I'm like, and I'm actively engaged. I can't have anything on my wrist.
It's an intense show, man. I've seen it. I was like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in that show.
I am so proud of the work that me and my community got to build on making that piece because it's a mean show that punches you with a right hook at the top. I love it. But that call was an adrenaline ride at the beginning. If my hand didn't shake a little bit from caffeination, I kind of was like, what is it about? But knowing the show, like not just because for calling a normal theater show, even with a fly system, I'm making sense of it. I guess people that do complicated musicals can absolutely relate to this game. It's just that, especially if you're talking a Wicked, somebody was telling me, one of my teammate, Maggie O'Donnell, on Teatro ZinZanni was telling me about Legally Blonde, and she also called Hamilton, though Hamilton, it's a turn, like I'm not in any way underwriting the technical complexity of Hamilton. I'm just saying at MJ1, I have toaster lifts that fire people at 18 feet per second, which requires a different level of complexity understanding. So for me, I memorize the model of the show in my head. So I have a complete three-dimensional feeling of what my building is for Michael Jackson 1 at Mandalay Bay. And I'm thinking about the technician that's walking. I already know what the timing is when Javon Greenwood walks from here to here because I've seen it on my monitor. So I know when the fit hits the shan, how quickly I can call certain things when things go awry. You just get a better sense of all of those pieces coming together. It's different than a small, Eugene O'Neill,
Mm-hmm. And like you said, with your colleague in Wuxi, the contingencies become very crucial once you're open, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
And also, but that keeps you invigorated, As somebody, I couldn't do a show, like the longest show I stayed at was MJ1, and it was still juicy to me by the ending because we were still evolving the show, and the people that were there are just, it's such an amazing onstage and backstage crew at MJ1, especially during that time period when I worked there. But like the contingency thinking and always progressively thinking in addition to PR events, because unlike I know theater does PR, but maybe not like at a regional, it's not the same thing when you're doing circus where it's like everybody wants your sexy show with the people doing flips and what have you, except when it's a water show, it's harder to do on TV unless you bring them to your theater. But the contingency and PR events keep you excited, keep you engaged, keep you involved.
Is there anything about going overseas and I think your philosophy is quite universal, I guess, in the way that you've described it. But was there any surprises for you, either going to Mexico or China, that you were like, oh, okay, this is new, that you had to navigate your own personal style apart from maybe pulling back sometimes? But was there any other surprises?
Well, so when I was in Australia with Opera Australia, I did one show, Die Meister Singer von Nuremberg, a 6.5-hour opera.
Hang on. When I was reading your thing, I was like, how do you suddenly be in Australia with Opera Australia? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. I know Chrissy Higgins, who's one of the main people down in Opera Australia, and she does USITT. Right. And so it had been a running joke for years when I was with Cirque, that she thought it would be hilarious to if I could take a sabbatical from Vegas and from Cirque du Soleil and come down there and just be an ASM for a show and push a broom, to have this person who is gloriously overqualified to come in. And because I had an opera love, that was an itch I wanted scratching. I wanted to get my opera chance. And what better time? And then on top of that, one of my hobbies, I'm a burner. Like I love Burning Man and Burning Man's culture. And so I go to a regional here, Lakes of Fire, that's I've been going to for years. And that's helped me and my artistic grow. Well, the first, there was pre-pro week for opera for the show. And then there was a 3-day weekend. And then we start rehearsal. And that 3-day weekend was the weekend for Burning Seed, which is the regional for both Sid and Melbourne. And so I was like, why? I have to take this contract. And that was the only thing that probably could have made me leave Mexico, because I love the JOYÀ. It's a great show, great people. But that opportunity came up and I'm like, this is big. And I would like to try my hand at opera, which I learned is not my taste. I love seeing opera. I love run crewing opera, but stage managing opera, the need to constantly be on the score, to give performers cues based on a score that they know too. Like the only reason it felt like I was giving them their go to enter the stage was because they were talking to another chorus member and just wanted to bullshit. But I just, pardon my Quebecois there, but I just had this feeling of like, I love the scale we're working on. I love all the stuff. The backstage team with Opera Australia, amazing humans. That props team if you guys are watching, I love y'all. It was just a wonderful life experience, but it also was this opening of, you're not an opera stage manager. That's okay. But the casualness, I want to say casualness of Australian, talking to an Australian, compared to the American kind of sense of a little uptight and a little like, we're here for work. We Americans love work. Whereas the Australians that were very much like, they're hardworking, and an amazing squad of people working, but the vibe was just a little different than what I was accustomed. So it had this kind of, in Mexico and in China, there's that feeling of, because the language is different, you easily connect to the culture being different. Whereas in Australia, it's just the accent, which I love. But that's the only thing that's reminding you, other than, small things. So you easily go back and forget, no, you're in a whole nother world. This is a whole nother culture. This is a whole nother vibe. You kind of have to get reminded in an English speaking country, that's just different.
I totally agree. I think like one of the hardest adjustments that I had to make was when I moved to Las Vegas, because as an Australian, I had the assumption that this would be an easy move. And it was a huge culture shock for me. And I traveled a lot, but I hadn't necessarily lived for a good length of time in another country. And, I've been in Asia and I've been in Africa and numerous places in Europe. And then I get to America and I've landed and I'm like, wow, okay, when you live somewhere, it's different when you're at a hotel and you're with a production gang and you're landing in a country and you're working for a limited time. When you got to figure out your life at the DMV and then how to get a social security number, and then like, I can't get a credit card because I have no credit history, and all of these things that you're just like, the first 12 months is intense. And I think it's vice versa in any other country as well. You just, like you said, you go to China and you go, okay, this is going to be tough. But even in other English speaking countries, it's a thing. And you started a little bit. Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to steer to the differences in China, bouncing off of that. But if you want to take your question.
I was going to steer to China myself. We're on the same wavelength, so go for it.
I would say that the big difference in China there was a part of my Americanness and being an artist is that I am very counterculture. I am very like, authority is like part of me being authority and wanting to, and I use big quotes as stage manager authority. That's not the illusion I'm under when I'm driving. But I like to have leadership that makes sense. If we're going to choose to do something, it should make sense. And so going to China, where it's a different interaction with their government system. The government said it, big deal. And we're doing this. Okay. The constant knowing that you're under surveillance, and I say that with no necessarily negativity, is just because at first I was in my American, my rights kind of mentality, because you can see the cameras very easily. You know that you're on the system. But then you talk to I hung out with a lot of Chinese people there, and it was like, of course, isn't that great? That means that we're completely protected from thieves, that thieves aren't going to just rob you on the day. It's a safe, there's that trust in what me and a Western would be like big brother, that was so surprising that I just kind of went, okay, I guess I can see that. Now, I didn't leave still agreeing with my Chinese compatriots and saying, yes, we need cameras everywhere. But there was a certain advantage to that. In Australia, the fact that voting is mandatory, that it's part of being a citizen. And for me, being a crunchy, Eagle Scout from Nebraska, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that there should be a cost of citizenship, and I don't mean a financial one. I mean, to be a citizen, you need to participate. And so I'm watching the Australians and then having arguments with my friends back home. They're like, no, man, it's your right. And I'm like, yeah, but also I felt like there was more civic engagement in Australia compared to what I was seeing back at home in the States, because they were required to participate in their own government, because their own government only exists because they participate. Like, it's these things of like, anyway, so between the surveillance of China and the mandatory like voting and what have you in Oz was just kind of like it helped me open my brain more in how I participate back home.
Yeah, I think that I concur completely. And I think you can never sit there and say, well, it's quite ethnocentric to be comparing everybody other culture to your own. And when you can look at it from a perspective, well, that's a positive, oh, that's not so positive, and look at every culture and society and governing rule and political systems and everything have positives and negatives to them. And I think that's, I've lived in Asia now for 11 years. And I think that's the thing that I can quite adequately say is that I have less and less judgment upon countries as a thing, and just to be like, okay, so that's how it works here, and that's how, and then you go to the Middle East and it's another whole bag, right? And so it's quite fascinating, because then you go into there and you're like, okay, how do I work in this environment? How do you navigate that culture and still try and do, at the core of what you do, your job, and lead effectively. So that's super impressive. I want to just go back a little bit about, you obviously have quite innate natural leadership skills, but you did start as crew. And so what was that transition like as you were being supported by your lecturer at the university? But what was your transition from being crew to manager, and what do you think that anybody who's looking to transition from being a more technician or lower ranking sort of I wouldn't say lower ranking, that's not even the right thing. It's other roles into management positions. What would you advise people to do, learn, take on, experience?
Well, so I started as a cart, right? I was a carpenter that I can weld, I can do a lot of those things, and I was doing that run crew work at Santa Fe Opera and Utah Shakespearean Festival. For those that don't know, when I say Shakes in America, we sometimes just shorten Billy's name to Shakespearean. Anyway, so for me, that transition was because I have natural leadership. It's there. Unfortunately, it is what it is. And I tend to, when going into a group, to identify what the strengths and weaknesses are of the group. And I was doing this before I was a stage manager. This is all, honestly, it's Boy Scout stuff of going into and used to being parts of groups and leading people to our committed goal. And also how to support other people when they're doing it, I would say, and by the by, that translates a lot in stage management. Anyway, for a technician going in, I started at the bottom, so my first show, I was an ASM, or assistant stage manager. And by bottom, I mean just another angle of stage management, because I like to erase the boundaries and just go, an ASM has different duties. It doesn't mean they're less. You're not an assistant to the stage manager. You're an assistant stage manager. So your squad goals are different. But I found by doing the ASM work and slowly starting things on in a training format, my brain really works well with the idea of apprentice, journeyman, master. And so for me, I figured I was apprenticing as a stage manager first and learning the game of it. I recommend that highly. Of ASM, production assistant. Do anything you can to get a nice view where there is enough of a safety net for you to make a mistake so that you're good, but you're also pushing your career forward. So I was a so at Utah Shakes, I did 2 years of run crew, and then I was a PA, production assistant, for an indoor rehearsal space. And for that indoor rehearsal, and in Utah's world, that is like entry level for stage management is to PA one of they have an indoor and an outdoor, and you would PA one of them, right? Well, I took great pleasure in studying my ASMs, SMs, or my SM team, and what their wants and needs are for that rehearsal. And instead of being a vessel waiting to be filled, waiting for them to tell me what they wanted, I'd be like, great, tomorrow you're in my, and I would, take the possessive, you're in my space tomorrow. Okay, great. We have 1776. I see on the rehearsal sheet, you have this. I assume this is what you want set up. Okay, great. So that when the SM walked in for their setup of the rehearsal, I have taken away any of the concerns on what we know, right? I have already, that set piece, because I'm a set guy, I know how to lift things without hurting myself or pulling my back. I know physics. Thank you, Santa Fe Opera, for teaching me how to move scenery. So I can right? Like I can move things much, much bigger than me, like visually, because I know where to put my weight and how to do momentum. So I would have it completely set up and ready for them to party so they can just worry about their job. And having that mindset of I am going to be excellent at the current level I'm at, while also being ready for should the change happen. For me if someone wants to hire me as an ASM, the way I dress at work, I often dress for the job I don't have, or rather dress in a way that is very easy for somebody to see me and go, you know what? John Grüber would be a good production stage manager because they can see how I'm doing these things. Employing that always and being ready for that is very helpful. I always treat every job as the interview for the next one. I have, due to my network, gotten many jobs. I got into Cirque because a guy remembered me 6 years earlier as the run crew guy that got things done. Became it's insane. And I was a production manager at Tahoe because a guy remembered from 2 years before I was a stage manager, not a production manager. And he just was like, oh, you go to Grüber, he can handle they felt very comfortable with what I was presenting. So this guy took a risk on me to be his production manager for a Shakespeare festival when I'd never PM'd before except for student works in undergrad. So by having that and being reliable and showing up for people as ready for the next level, that all helps, And then also another piece of advice I give is once you're through that door and now you're a stage manager, make sure that you are ready for the job you're currently at and not trying to use the strengths that work for that job that don't work for this job. Stop using those strengths. Stay in the job you're in and trust the people there before. Like, there was once upon a time when I was less of a stage manager and I would absolutely go, well, I know how long it takes to weld that thing or to build that thing. So I would be pushing my carpenters on that, not thinking of the greater picture that they're having to think on their particular role. And it wasn't serving the play. So making sure you discard those things. I know somebody who was a great GSM. They stepped up to another position. They kept acting like a great GSM and not realizing the negative impact it was having. Instead of, okay, use what's good, discard the rest. Jack Fiva, who's also on the call, once told me to trust in the fact that cream rises to the top. That you have to, when you show up in a place, do your best work right there and make it very difficult for the people not to promote you, but not in a aggressive way, but trust in the fact that eventually you're going to get to the position that you're meant to be at. So having that as a technician going in, it's very helpful,
Yeah. I think that's a great advice, especially as you, like you said, you move into a different role and you can't be overseeing. I remember there was talk about me doing another role, perhaps on the House of Dancing Water, to which I flatly refused because I was like, I built the show as production stage manager and I've run it as general stage manager. I cannot let that role go. And it would be horrible for anyone if I was still in the building and they took that position. It just would not be fair to them. I knew that. Yeah. When I moved on, I would move on from the show, not move into another role, because it would not have been fair to the person who took the position. And I just knew myself well enough that I was too emotionally attached to it, not because I couldn't let them do the role. I wouldn't have been able to let it go properly. So I moved on from the show. Just for our audience, we've got a few minutes left. We've already kept him almost for an hour. So if you have any questions, ask them now. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a couple of other questions. But if you've got any questions, shoot them at us. I kind of want to know, okay, so you're now back at you're at Teatro ZinZanni, and just overall coming out of the pandemic and looking at the industry as a whole, what's your kind of hopes and your thoughts and of what you'd like to see with the industry moving forward? And have we learned anything in our downtime? And what would you like us to have learned?
Well, I mean, I will own that right now I'm very focused on upgrading the American corner of our industry and on a specific topic. And that topic is diversity on our backstage. Right now, I see our calling here, and I know this is very specific to the United States. I mean, the world is having a balance from what came before, what we did with the native people. Like in Australia, when I was there were a lot of conversations about that when it came to Australia Day and what have you.
Absolutely.
But for us, our challenge is, how do we get balance from our history, whether that's with Native American people or African Americans? How do we find that balance? So in circus, it's already fairly diverse outside of our borders, outside of the United States, fairly diverse, right? There are people from all walks. I've worked with many small Mexican family circus, but it is still monoculture. So like when I was 18, I created a 20-year plan for my career, right? And I followed it for 20 years, navigating and driving it, and was very successful with it, right? And very happy with my outcome because I'm a big picture guy. I like to see the vision. I want to see the city on the hill and drive this mother towards that. So for me, my stuff from the last 10 year or the last year and the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter is, I agree. I am very happy to be the person at the chain link fence that is blocking people from opportunity with bolt cutters to cut this mow down. So right now with Teatro ZinZanni-Chicago, we're doing our level best to diversify what's on stage and what's backstage, the people that we're working with, and providing the opportunities where possible. So like at Teatro ZinZanni, every 6 months, we have a period where we go and we put in a new show. The theater goes dark for a week to 2 weeks, and we're working specifically to do a new show for Teatro ZinZanni to support, right? Well, for all of us, this is an opportunity to reach out to the local schools, and is there somebody that is BIPOC that may have not thought about, or at least not our dominant white male, cis male here, that is wanting that opportunity and thought that because of whatever that was blocking them wasn't available to them. Well, by golly, man, I got a PA gig that will last a month, but at the very least you got access point so that because a connection to me could lead you to Cirque. It could lead you to Dragone. It could, if you do your job, kick butt at your job and connect in this way. Well, that's one opportunity of doing that. Also, in terms of our performers, we're reaching out to the local Chicago circus community, which is quite diverse. And can we get, I don't know that many African-American silk artists, and I'd like to change that, please. So part of that is, how do we do that? Can we use our particular platform of TZ in downtown Chicago we have a lobby, we can be building lobby animation, we can get a, BIPOC hand-to-hand or all these different things. That only happens by the dominant culture coming out, opening our doors up, and helping, making sure that we bring this flow forward. It requires work on our part. We can't just hang out. So for me, that's in my 10 years when I turned 50, so 9 years. But for me, my 50th birthday will be celebrated, but I'm running a circus community that is diverse and actually represents what makes the actual part that makes the United States a unique place and special.
I think that's a wonderful.
You can't tell I'm a little fired up about this topic.
No, I love people's passion about it. It's something that it comes up a lot in our podcasts and our discussions, and I don't necessarily think that it's only in the States that this needs to happen, for sure. I just think that the conversation is very on point right now with that in America, where there's a lot of intention there to work on that, which I think is fantastic. And hopefully that alights conversation in other parts of the world where that needs to happen as well. And
for us, it's we've had so much conversation for so long. My dad was a labor union steward, right? So I've been part of Omaha, seeing the racial disparity in Omaha, and I grew up watching it and trying to be part of the change, but in a very, hey man, stop using that word around me way. No, dude, this is our world and we have to take it. We have to be part of the change, because otherwise, what's the point?
And also, I think that's the great thing about, especially in the arts industry, is because if people start to see that on stage, they see that change in the culture, right? Then it becomes more. Rather than us being a reflection, we drive that, right? So if you participate that and then you show that to the audiences, then that then becomes the norm, as opposed to perhaps what it used to be.
I want what I call the will and grace moment. There was a point in our lives where before gay marriage, gay people being public and out loud in our culture was under the shame of the AIDS epidemic, and then will and grace. There was all these other works. I'm not saying will and grace was the impetus, but it definitely was the tipping point in our culture of all of a sudden, wow, being gay is okay, pride, okay. Like, there's still more work to be done. We're not done. However, that was this tipping point. I want to see the same thing in stage management. So it's no longer this ivory tower, you know. We have a wonderful, there's a stage manager group on Facebook where we're promoting different BIPOC stage managers and making sure that we see this, and so that we can promote, support, and really make the change. You know, I want that zeitgeist turn, that tipping point in our industry.
It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful vision. Thank you so much, John, for spending an hour with us at Theatre Art Life. It's been such a wonderful time to get to know you, and thank you for spending an hour with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I've been a fan for you for some time. I love what you're doing with Theatre Arts Life, and just delighted to have the conversation today. So thank you.
Well, we will be keeping in touch from now on, that's for sure. And thank you everyone for joining us online today. Super appreciative. And if you've got any feedback, please let us know. If you've got any nominees for our stage management chat, then please let us know. We'd love to have your suggestions, or if you're a stage manager yourself, you would like to have a chat. We'd love to hear you, especially, as John says, BIPOC, you know, AAPI, any of those ones in the house. Call us up. We'd love to speak to you. And thank you so much. All right, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.